Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order, please. The Niagara Peninsula Watershed is located on the traditional territories of Indigenous peoples dating back countless generations. We want to show our respect for their contributions and recognize the role of treaty making in which is now Ontario. Can we please do a roll call? Executive Coordinator Bevo.
Good morning, everyone. Roll call beginning with Member Beattie.
Good morning.
And Member Brady.
I'm here.
Member Clark.
Good morning, Sir Grant.
Member Kuhn-Peterson.
Good morning.
Member Cridland.
Present.
Member Fior.
Good morning.
Member Foster.
Present.
Member Halinga.
Present.
Member Houston.
Present.
Member Ingrao.
Present.
Member Kaywall.
Present.
Member McKenzie.
Present.
Member Metcalf.
Present.
Member Rapley.
Present.
Member Smith.
Yes.
Member Steele.
Here.
I understand Member Shurton is not able to attend today. All right. Member Woodhouse.
Here.
And Member Wright.
Present.
Thank you, everyone. Can I remind you now to mute yourselves? It just helps with the feedback. And housekeeping, we will do as we've always done. We will do whoever is opposed, and we see too many that are opposed. We will do then a recorded vote. So before we begin, I'd just like to welcome two Niagara College public interns, public relations interns, Emily Yalowski and Rebecca Berardi, who are attending with us this morning, so welcome. We also have another gentleman, I believe, Gregory Ford, who is the Coastal Stewardship Coordinator, and he's also the Great Lakes Water Monitoring Manager at the Swim, Drink, Fish, or just call him the Environmental Practitioner in Training. So welcome to Gregory and to Emily and to Rebecca. So we're going to move on with our meeting, please. Are there any changes to the agenda, Mr. Bevo?
There are none that I am aware of other than not for the source water protection.
Okay, thank you. And are there any declarations of interest? Thank you. So it's moved by Member Beattie and seconded by Member Brady to approve the agenda as printed. Any opposed? Seeing none, thank you. So now we're on to the approval of the minutes. So we have 3 sets of minutes, folks. We're going to receive the first one. Approve all 3 of them. So it is moved.
Madam Chair, sorry, it's the source water protection, just the one set of minutes from December 17th for the Source Protection Authority meeting.
Oh, my apologies. So there's 4. And the water protection, this is December 17th.
Yes, sorry, Madam Chair, what we've convened is the Source Protection Authority meeting. There's a separate agenda for that.
And we're doing that right now?
Yes.
Oh, my apologies, folks. I don't have that in front of me, so I'm gonna just have to wing this. So I will turn over to CAO Sharma to start us off, please. Because I don't have my notes, sorry.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. Apologies for the problem here with your notes and minutes. I think first we are going to be starting with the Source Protection Authority meeting. As everybody knows, the board acts as a Source Protection Authority. The first meeting today is for the Source Protection Authority. Grant, do I have to do the roll call for this again, or can we proceed without that?
No, we've done our roll call. We're just adopting the minutes now. We're on item 3 for the Source Protection Authority meeting.
Can you display the agenda on the screen for members, please?
I certainly can. Sorry, just 1 second here.
Thank you.
No, this is a full authority.
Yep.
I think Gina's done that. Gina, can you get the Source Protection Authority meeting up, please?
Perfect. I think this is the agenda.
Correct.
Okay, good. So approval of agenda. Anybody opposed?
We already did. Sorry, we already did the agenda, and I've got it now. Thank you. I've just sent it to my email. Thank you so much for taking over,
Okay.
CAO.
Madam Chair, you want to start with approval of minutes then?
Yes, that's where we're going. Thank you. So we need approval of the minutes. It's moved by Member Clark, seconded by Member Cridland, that the approval of the minutes from December the 17th, 2020 be approved. Anyone opposed? And because I can't see you, you're going to have to shout out, folks. And I don't know whether we need to screenshot this anymore, Gina, because I've got it in front of me, as I think everybody else does too. So we have no correspondence. We're on to discussion items. So report number SPA 0121. This is the 2020 Drinking Water Source Protection Annual Progress Reporting. So now I will go back to CAO Shamra to direct this to the appropriate staff, please. Gina, can we take that down? And also, Chandra, you need to unmute yourself, please.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. Through you, Thomas Pork, our project manager, is with us on the call today, and Steve Miller, our senior manager. I will direct this item to both of them.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, folks. Thank you, Madam CAO. Madam Chair, I'm going to refer this to Tom, our Source Protection Coordinator, to speak to the report.
Good morning, Tom.
Morning, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Good morning. This is the annual progress report for the Drinking Water Source Protection Program. I'll try not to get too into the weeds here, but basically every year we're required under the Clean Water Act to report on the progress that we've made on the Niagara Peninsula Source Protection Area Source Protection Plan. And when I say progress, I mean progress on the implementation of the policies that are within that plan. This has been ongoing now for several years. I think this is our 4th year of doing annual progress reporting. And we the ministry, when I say the ministry, that's the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks, have streamlined the process by doing the majority of the work through their online reporting platform. It used to be that we were filling out a lengthy Word document and answering all their questions and doing lots of different stuff, and they've now all compiled that into an easy to compile online reporting tool platform, and then from that we can generate these 4 reports which are attached to this report for your review. The first being the Drinking Water Source Protection Annual Progress Report, and this is the public-facing report. This is the one that gets posted on our website and contains the high-level information on the progress of the Drinking Water Source Protection Program. The second is the 2020 Policy Implementation Status. So this actually displays each of the policies within our Source Protection Plan and its status of implementation. So whether it is implemented, it's not implemented, and the rationale as to why that is. The third report is the Policy Implementation Summary. So that just gives you a very high-level overview of how many policies we have, how many of them are implemented, and a percent implementation. Sorry about that. And then lastly is the Supplemental Form. So this is the detailed report that we submit to the ministry, where they ask us a whole bunch of questions about our progress, and we submit the answers to them online, and then the form is generated and printed out here for your review. So I'm not going to go into the details of each report. They're attached for your review, but basically all of these 4 documents will make the submission to the ministry once we get the Source Protection Authority approval. So if that's all I have, unless there are any questions from the members.
Thank you. If there's any questions, I forgot to remind you that we could use the chat line if you prefer, instead of waving frantically, or if you're online on phone. Are there any questions for Thomas or Steve? Seeing none, thank you very much. So I have it moved by Member Kuhn-Peterson and seconded by Member Fior to approve the Drinking Water Source Protection Annual Progress Report. Any opposed? Seeing none. Thank you, everyone. So it's moved by Member Foster, seconded by Member Halenga. Sorry, any new business? Thank you. So again, moved by Member Foster, seconded by Member Halenga to adjourn. Any opposed? Thank you. So now, folks, we are now on to our meeting, and we will call to order. Again, we're going to have to do another roll call, I think, just to keep this all official. So Executive Coordinator Grant Bevo, can you please do another roll call, and we're set to go.
All right, beginning with Member Beatty.
Good morning again.
Member Brady. Member Brady, are you there? I don't see you on my screen either.
Okay, we'll keep him in mind.
Oh, there he is. All right. Member Clark.
Still here.
Member Kuhn-Peterson. Member Kuhn-Peterson. Perhaps we've lost her for a moment. Member Cridland.
Here.
Member Fior.
Present.
Member Foster.
Good morning this time.
Member Halenga.
Here.
Member Houston.
Still here.
Member Ingrail.
Here.
Member Kwal.
Here.
Member McKenzie.
Present.
Member Metcalf.
Still present.
Member Rapley.
Present.
Member Smith.
Yes.
Member Steele.
Here.
I believe Member Shurton has still not logged in. Member Woodhouse.
Here.
Member Wright.
Present.
And we'll circle back. Member Kuhn-Peterson, are you there?
She's still there. Actually, she just texted me.
Oh, excellent. And
Okay.
of course, Chair Johnson.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for your patience. Again, housekeeping, any opposed? So the Niagara Peninsula Watershed is located on traditional territories of Indigenous peoples dating back countless generations. We want to show our respect for their contributions and recognize the role of treaty making in what is now Ontario. So again, Grant, is there any changes to the agenda, please?
Yes, there's been a request for a closed session, and it's a follow-up to the closed session that we had at last month's meeting. Same subject matter.
Thank you. So it is moved by Member Fior, seconded by Member Foster to approve the agenda as amended. Anybody opposed? Seeing none, thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? Conflict of interest in this meeting? I'm seeing none. Thank you. Approval of the minutes. We have 3 sets of minutes. We have the minutes of the full authority meeting dated March 19th, 2021. We have the minutes of the full authority closed session meeting dated March 19th, 2021. And we have minutes of the special full authority meeting dated March 30th, 2021 for approval. So it's moved by Member Halenga, seconded by Member Houston, that we approve all 3. If there's any discussion, we'll break them up one at a time. Any opposition? Seeing none, thank you. So we're moving down to correspondence, please. 4A, correspondence dated January 28, 2021 from Conservation Ontario to the Provincial Planning Policy Branch. This is regarding the Conservation Ontario comments on the proposed implementation of provisions in the Planning Act that provide the Minister enhanced authority to address certain matters as part of a zoning order. It's ERO number 019-2811, and this is to be received. Are there any questions or comments on this? I'm seeing none. Thank you. So it is moved by Member Kwal, seconded by Member McKenzie, that we receive the 4A. Any opposition? Seeing none, thank you. 4B, correspondence dated March 25th, 2021 from Conservation Ontario to, Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing staff. This is regarding Conservation Ontario's comments on the proposed changes to the Minister's zoning orders and the Planning Act, ERO, number 1019-3233. This is to be received and it will be moved by Member Metcalf and seconded by Member Rapley. Are there any questions or comments? Any opposed? Thank you. Sorry, somebody, whenever you move, I think you're waving your hand, so that's why I'm stopping for a second to make sure. 4C, this is correspondence dated March the 30th, 2021 from Conservation Ontario to the Ministry of Natural Resources. This is regarding the Conservation Ontario's comments on the proposed to amend the Public Lands Act Ontario Regulation 239/13 to remove the 10-day registry waiting period for existing shoreland erosion control structures. Regulatory registration posting 21-MNRF 008. This is to be received and it's moved by Member Steele, seconded by Member Smith. Any opposition to receive? Seeing none, thank you. We're on to presentations. Our first presentation is 5A, and this is by Steve Miller, who is the Senior Manager. This is regarding the Npca Flood Forecasting and Warning Program. So we'll take it over to Steve, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the board. Gina, could you kindly queue up the presentation, please?
And while Gina's doing that, if you have any comments or questions and want to be on the speakers list, please use the chat line because I won't be able to see you waving frantically at me. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Gina. So this presentation is going to be a brief overview of the Conservation Authority's Flood Forecasting Warning Program. Next slide, please, Gina. Oh, there we go. So the purpose is to apprise the board of the various programs and projects that we have here at the Conservation Authority. I will keep this brief. Next slide, please, Gina. Great. So we all know that floods threaten the safety of our communities. Next slide, please, Gina. It impacts people. Gina, please. Property. Gina, please. And our transportation network. Next slide, please, Gina. This is a critical situation. I'd like to chat a little bit about what the Conservation Authority is doing about it. Gina, please. So in Ontario, conservation authorities have been delegated the responsibility to deliver flood forecasting and warning programs. That is, conservation authorities predict when and where a flood is likely to occur and then issue the appropriate messages. In areas that don't have conservation authorities, the Ministry of Natural Resource and Forestry provides this service. Next slide, please, Gina. So with respect to emergency response, the more lead time people and municipalities have to respond to an event, the better prepared they will be. And so that's the goal of the Conservation Authority's Flood Forecasting and Warning Program. Next slide, please, Gina. So when we talk about flooding in Niagara, there are three mechanisms that we have to look at, the three amigos of bad news, of storm events. The first, of course, is winter melt. And so typically in the spring, temperatures warm up, snowpack on the ground, sometimes we get rain, and that melting snow results in flooding. Now, when I say typical, that's typical, but Niagara, we experience freeze-thaw cycles throughout the entire winter. So this isn't simply a spring event that happens end of March, beginning of April. It could just as easily happen end of December. So we see this. The second mechanism that brings flooding is, I've lumped thunderstorms and tropical storms. So these are intense, short, sharp, localized storm events that, in the case of thunderstorms, result because of the high heat during summer, July and August, or in case of tropical storms throughout hurricane season between August and October. We've got tropical storms, the hurricanes that start in the Caribbean and can track their way up to impact us here in Niagara. The third mechanism, third amigo, is one we're familiar with lately, is the storm surges. The events that lead up to these storm surges, the strong southwest winds sustained, typically occur between November and March. And so really throughout the year, we need to be cognizant, we need to be aware of these mechanisms, because one of these three amigos has the potential to hit at some point throughout the year. Next slide, please, Gina. So, to deliver on this mandate, let's chat a little bit about what Conservation Authority staff do every day. Every day, Conservation Authority staff monitor our 19 stream gauge stations to determine what the levels are in the watercourses. You can see the map top right, location of our stream gauges and climate stations. We have some examples. The shed is the stream gauge on the Welland River, City of Welland. Bottom left, Woodburn in Hamilton, 20 Mile Creek, and there's our shot of our water resource technician, Ryan Kitchen, the Npca's MacGyver, working on a stream gauge station in 12 Mile Creek. Next slide, please. Right, so all this information is collected. It's posted onto our website in near real time in order to inform folks of what's happening. I say near real time, there's a 15-minute delay between collecting the water level information, sending it either via satellite or via cell, amalgamating it on our servers, and posting it to our website. So we have a 15-minute delay, but it's pretty, we're very pleased with the robustness of this system. Here we have a screenshot of our Welland River gauge at Southbrook Golf Course in Hamilton. Next slide, please, Gina. Again, every day, Conservation Authority staff monitor the current ground conditions within the watershed. Is the ground saturated? If it is, that means more water runs off at a quicker rate. Is the ground bone dry? If that's the case, that means more water soaks in before it starts to run off. And there's that Ryan guy again. He's conducting snow survey. The Conservation Authority undertakes snow surveys twice a month during the winter time. What Ryan's doing with that device, he's measuring the snowpack. He's measuring how much water is in that snowpack, and do that by taking a sample and weighing it. And so that gives the Conservation Authority staff some idea, should we get warm weather or rainfall event, how much water is already bound into the landscape in the snowpack. Next slide, please, Gina. Again, every day, Conservation Authority staff monitor just how much rain or snow has fallen across the watershed. We have 20 climate stations to help us assess this. We see two of our Haldeman stations right here. Next slide, please, Gina. Again, all the information we gather, we post to our website to make it freely available. and fully available to all our residents. Here we see with respect to precipitation, we have totals anywhere from 1 hour all the way out to 96 hours. Next slide, please, Gina. We're fortunate here in Niagara that we're covered by two major installations, the weather installations at Toronto Airport and Buffalo Airport. And every day we take a look at the forecasts coming from these airports and the weather radar that are provided from them. Next slide, please, Gina. And once more, every day, Conservation Authority staff take a look at what's going on, Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. Again, fortunate in Niagara that we have two government organizations, one Canadian, one American, Canadian, the Surface Water Monitoring Center in Peterborough, run by Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, and NOAA's Great Lakes Forecasts system. We use this to better understand the timing and magnitude of any storm surge events that are anticipated on either Lake Erie or Lake Ontario. If after reviewing all this conditions warrant, next slide please, Gina. Messages are sent out. The public is notified. So we send out flood bulletins. We do these in a couple of ways. We want to inform our member municipalities, our first responders, and news media, amongst others, just what is happening, what's the timing, what's the magnitude, and we try and convey a message. What should folks do about it? We try and give a local flavor to these messages. Next slide, please. So not only do we send out emails, but these flood bulletins, these messages are posted to our website and broadcast on our social media platforms. Next slide, please, Gina. And they're also, these messages are also sent out through our alertable mobile app. We've talked about this one. This is the app that can be downloaded on a mobile device, a tablet, a smart speaker that relays information regarding natural hazards. Next slide, please, Gina. And as we've seen during the Lake Erie storm surge events that we've had in the last 2 years, we can tailor these flood bulletins to a specific area. So now that they mean something, they are dedicated. Folks now take heed rather than being in receipt of a blanket flood bulletin. Next slide, please, Gina. Great. It's worth mentioning that the alertable app is freely downloaded, and we promote it on our website under the flood status section. Next slide, please, Gina. Great. One of the nice things about the alertable platform is the monthly analytics that it provides. This is a screenshot from the October analytic. A little out of date. I can tell you we have about approximately 1,300 subscribers, or 1,300 mobile devices have downloaded the alertable app. Interestingly enough, it's almost evenly split between Apple and Android users. Next slide, please, Gina. And to wrap it up, it's worth mentioning that by reducing the impact of storm events on people, property, and infrastructure, this is one example of how the Conservation Authority, the Npca, contributes to help make our watershed resilient to climate change. And last slide, Gina, that's my thank you, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions you might have.
Super, thank you. Gina, can you unshare, please? I can see everybody's face. Okay, thank you, Member Brady, and thank you, Member Smith, for that zoology trivia. Thank you. Member Brady.
Thank you. I'm not sure what that meant, but okay.
Read the chat.
I have one question for you, and that is, I've noticed, I was out at the beach at Lake Erie recently, and I've noticed that the beach is much larger. Has the Conservation Authority been aware of any records that shows that lake levels seem to be down a bit this year as compared to last year?
Yes. Thanks for the question. Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, the Lake Erie is presently sitting about 15 inches above average. Lake Ontario is about 11 inches below average. Okay. We again, by looking at all the products put out on the Great Lakes by the two government, the Canadian and the American agency, we're fully prized. So yes, Member Brady, your observation is indeed correct.
Thank you. Member Brady? All done? Okay, thank you. Member Woodhouse, please. Oh, sorry, Member Rapley. My apologies. Member Fior.
Just a quick one. In regard to the levels being down, there was definitely a lack of rain up until last Sunday. And 4 Mile Creek was down, Niagara River, and obviously Lake Ontario, as you mentioned. Then there was quite a rainfall over the weekend. So that quite a bit of rain we had last weekend, has it made much of a change this week in what we're seeing?
Steve?
Yep, through you, Madam Chair. Thanks for the question. I realized when I answered, I should have, Member Brady, I should have put this in context. Lake Erie is presently sitting 15 inches above its average water level, but that is a decline in the last 2 years where it was approximately 3 feet above its average water level. So it has declined, but it is above average. Let's talk about Lake Erie first. 95% of the water that flows into Lake Erie comes from the upper Great Lakes, so Superior, Michigan, Huron, and those water levels are driven by the amount of precipitation that occurs in the upper lakes watersheds. Over the past couple of years, the reason the water levels have been so high is because there's been an unusually large amount of rainfall and a big snowpack in the upper lakes watersheds. All that water makes its way downstream into Lake Erie. The amount of runoff in the Niagara Peninsula's watershed that gets to Lake Erie is insignificant compared to what's coming down from the upper lakes. There is no mechanism to control the outflow of Lake Erie. Lake Erie just naturally flows into the Niagara River, downstream over the falls, and on its merry way into Lake Ontario. There are no gates. There are no control structures that can control the flow out of Lake Erie. That's in contrast to Lake Ontario. Lake Ontario is controlled. The Moses Saunders Dam at Cornwall gives Ontario Power Generation and New York Hydro, it's a joint operation, the ability through discharging water through that hydro station to control the water in Lake Ontario. But it's a huge lake. It takes, even at full discharge, it takes a long time for it to draw down. And even then, there's a balance to be had. Too much water discharged from Lake Ontario has the ability to threaten the Port of Montreal. If the Ottawa River floods, the Ottawa River confluences the St. Lawrence downstream of the Moses Saunders Dam, it could serve to raise the water levels in and around Montreal, making for a dangerous situation. So those operators at the Moses Saunders have a balancing act to play, and that's what they were challenged with in 2017 and 2019. And so to answer your question, Member Rapley, the precipitation that we recently had has very little impact on Lake Erie Lake Ontario. The driving force in Lake Erie is the water coming down from the upper lakes. And in Lake Ontario, it's the operation of the Moses Saunders Dam at Cornwall.
Thank
Can
you.
I just ask a question on that? Above Niagara Falls, there are those huge gates that go across that river. And sometimes, you know, that we often birdwatch there, so I know the area. And it can be open or closed, controlling what goes over the falls, right?
Through you, Madam Chair. Absolutely. Now, that's river control. Again, a facility jointly operated by Ontario Power Generation and New York Power. What that does is serves to divert. When the gates are closed, water backs up and it's diverted into the Chippewa-Queenston Power Canal to direct more water to the Adam Beck generating station. It does the same on the New York side. The problem or the issue here is the grade is so great from the mouth of the Niagara River at Lake Erie down to river control that operating those gates does nothing to control the outflow of Lake Erie at Fort Erie.
Okay. All right. That's interesting.
Thank you. I have Member Fior, then Member Smith. Anyone else while I'm writing my list up so far? Okay, thank you. Member Fior.
Thank you, Chair, through you, perhaps to CAO Sharma. Just looking at the website right now, and I'm wondering if it is feasible to move into the quick links section of the website, something directly to the flooding page to allow our visitors to get to the Alertable app quicker. So I see that on the quick links, we have a few items there, but not flooding. So something that can be explored when there are updates to the website. Thank you.
Thank you. Chandra?
To you, Chair Johnson, this is a very timely question. We've just made some updates to the website. They're launched today for staff to internally review everything and check. Steve is on that group and working with our communication folks. He can certainly look into that and make sure that that is done. It's a small, minor detail.
Thank you. So I'm on to Member Smith, please.
In the presentation, there was, I think it was mentioned that there's 19 monitoring stations that are monitored every single day. The impression that I got, and I only got this impression because of the picture, was that there's a person that goes out to these stations every day and checks them. But is it that way, or is it that the stations send back information like through the magic of technology?
Steve?
No, great question. Through you, Madam Chair. So all our remote stations, whether they're stream gauge or whether they're climate precip stations, they do their thing. They monitor their levels. They understand how much rain is falling, and then they relay that information back to our servers at the main office remotely, either via cell modem. We have landline redundancies, or we use a slick system. We're part of the GOES satellite network, which for some of the remote stations, like I showed you Rugrock tracked in Haldeman, that's a fairly remote station. We wanted to have avoid issues with self-service, so we run direct to satellite. All that stuff bounces remotely into our servers at the main office. It's compiled and then broadcast to our website, which you've seen on that photo of Ryan. He was just undertaking some routine calibration and maintenance on one of our stations.
I get it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Because that's the end of my list. Seeing none, it's been moved by Member Wright, seconded by Member Woodhouse, to receive Steve's presentation with our thank yous. Any opposition? Seeing none, thank you. Thank you very much. Steve. Now we're on to a second presentation by Jennifer Court, who is the Executive Director, Green Infrastructure Ontario, and it's regarding an economic impact assessment of green infrastructure sector in Ontario. So welcome, Jennifer.
Sorry, Madam Chair, Ms. Court was not able to make it today, so she will be presenting hopefully in May.
Okay, that would have been good to know when we did agenda amendment. Thank you. So we're on to delegations. Seeing none, we're on to consent items. 7A, this is report number FA2521, expanding the Greenbelt proposal. Npca comments. This is the comments that the staff have sent in. They just want to inform us of those comments. Are there any questions or your comments? So this is just to receive. So it is moved by Member Beatty's not there, Member Brady, and seconded by Member Clark that we receive those comments with our thanks to the staff. Any opposition? Seeing none. Thank you. So we're on to 7B. This is report number FA2621. This is the compliance quarterly statistics. CAO Sharma, did you want to? Sorry, Member Houston?
I'm sorry. I'm looking at my agenda, and 7A says compliance and enforcement 2021 Q1 statistics. And I think you just read out the Greenbelt comments.
That's the agenda that I have that we did the review with. So CAO Sharma?
Madam Chair, I will just arrange Grant or Gina to send you the updated agenda that was circulated to members after our review, which was a week before. It's not your fault. It was a week before our meeting. And,
well, I actually pulled it off the website, so I'll let you know that the agenda on the website then is not correct.
No. The agenda on the website is correct, Member Houston. The updated agenda that was circulated to the members is the right agenda. We generally brief the chair in advance, a week in advance, and then there are some items that were not confirmed at the time of the briefing. So Chair Johnson is also correct. She's reading from that agenda. So we will just address that right away. We will send Madam Chair the agenda. Madam Chair, until you're receiving, would you like me to carry on with the meeting for you?
Actually, I'll switch it over to Vice Chair Mackenzie, who will be taking it until I get the correct agenda, and I hope we get this corrected for next meeting. My apologies, everyone. Vice Chair Mackenzie, would you mind taking the chair? Oh, you need to mute yourself, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Johnson. So we're on to consent items 7A, I understand. Report number FA2621, compliance and enforcement 2021, Q1 statistics. This is for receipt. I will have the recognize Member Cridlin as moving this, and second by Member Smith. Any discussion? Yes, Member Houston.
Thank you. So I guess I have just a question to staff. We seem to see an escalation of violations, and I'm wondering, do we have an idea? Like, I'm wondering, I know there's been an influx in new residents. They're probably not familiar with the watershed and the regulations around the watershed, or at least I'm going to say that's the experience I've had with some of the complaints in my municipality. Can you speak to maybe, why this phenomenon is occurring, and if there's something we can do to clarify to residents so that they, hopefully the ones who don't intend to violate can do so. I don't think we, I don't know what to do about people who just know there are rules and ignore them, but I'm sure there are people out there who have honestly made a mistake, right? So maybe for staff to comment.
Jason Culp, Manager of Compliance and Enforcement, will deal with that.
Yes, through you, Vice Chair Mackenzie, to Member Houston. In my conversations with all of the regulatory agencies that we are regularly in contact with, this isn't unique to the Npca. From federal, provincial, right through to municipal bylaw officers in our watershed, everyone has seen an exponential increase over the past 24 months, even pre-pandemic, in the number of complaints and violations that they're dealing with. Part of that in our watershed is a positive story in one way, in that as we've been rebuilding our compliance and enforcement presence in the watershed over the past 24 months, we have rebuilt a lot of our partnerships with our municipal partners, as well as our other regional, provincial, and federal regulatory agencies. So part of the increase that we're seeing is actually an increased awareness of what was likely already happening on the landscape. It's not just necessarily that there's actually more occurrences happening, it's that we now actually know and are able to actively respond to those occurrences and potential violations. There is a lot of crossover between the various regulatory agencies, and as we talk to each other more, we become more involved in each other's day-to-day concerns. The other thing that we're seeing is right now, there is a bit of what I'll call a pandemic response, in that people are home right now. There's a lot more people who are at home. There's a lot more people who are out in the more passive areas of our watershed, either for their own recreational purposes or just, going for a drive, kind of watching what's going on. And we're receiving more complaints because there's literally more eyes on the ground right now. I do, however, believe that there is an opportunity for some enhanced communications and resident education, because one of the things we are seeing is that there is some confusion out there as far as who exactly is responsible for what. Is it, Department of Fisheries and Oceans? Is it the Npca? Is it the local municipality? And we're really working towards trying to enhance the education component of our enforcement program, and hopefully that will help as well.
So just a follow-up question, are we finding that this is happening? Is there, a higher percentage of maybe new homeowners who aren't familiar with the regulations, or are we finding just, that it's existing homeowners who are either unaware or not following the rules?
Through you, Chair, to Member Houston, I haven't really mined the data to look at the specifics of new versus existing in relation to the complaints and violations that we get. So just kind of off the top of my head, it's primarily related to smaller, say, accessory structures. We've got some concerns along both the Lake Ontario and Lake Erie shorelines. Due to the storm events the last few years, people are trying to repair or replace their shoreline structures. Generally, that's the case because new builds require a building permit from the municipality, and we have good working relationships with our local municipalities where, if someone comes to the municipality and says, I want to build a shed or I want to build a new house, there's planning and permitting approvals, and we're part of that discussion. So it's not, I would say it's likely not so much related to significant new builds. It's people doing, an addition, maybe in a garage, doing some work on the shoreline. That's where a lot of our concerns and complaints have come from recently.
Just one more follow-up. Just from what I'm seeing, Pelham has seen an influx of Toronto people moving into our area, as every other municipality I think has, and they're not familiar with the watershed and our regulations. So I'm finding some of these new homeowners are trying to alter their properties in ways that don't follow the regulations. And I'm wondering if there's an opportunity similar to the think before you dig campaign that the hydro companies do. Maybe if we did something like that and communicated with real estate agents and had them help distribute the materials just to avoid problems with homeowners, maybe it would help as an educational component. So I'm just going to make that suggestion, but thank you very much for your input.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Member Hewson. Are there any other members that have queries of staff or discussion on this item? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the vote. Any opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next item is report number 24, FA 2421, review of the Auditor General Report, recommendation number 9. I will take this as being moved by Member Ingrao and second by Member K-Wall. Any discussion? Seeing no hands, oh, Member K-Wall.
Thank you. So I just want one question of clarification based on the note. Am I correct that since 2018, when these policies were approved, that our operating practice has really been 15-meter buffers with lots created through subdivisions?
Through you, Vice Chair, through you, I'll ask David Deleuze to respond to that question. He's our Senior Manager of Planning.
Through you, Vice Chair, thank you for the question. Yes, since the, well, yes and no. The policy from 2018 forward has a stipulation. It starts off with 30 meters as the general buffer. If you wish to establish a new lot within 30 meters, you then have to do an environmental impact study, but you can reduce it only as low as 15 meters. So 15 meters is a hard, fast, no reduction, for example, for a subdivision below 15 meters.
Okay, and my follow-up question then for the CAO. The 30-meter buffer is mentioned a number of times in the Conservation Authorities Act, in our regulation, in our policies. And if you go on the web, you can actually find some scientific research papers that talk about 30-meter buffers and the functioning of wetlands. I was unable to find any research papers that talked about buffers less than 30 meters and the functioning of wetlands. Are you aware of any such research, CAO Sharma?
Through you, Vice Chair McKenzie, it's a fair question. And let me just say that the impact assessment of this type, it is difficult to undertake here and in many other areas that are urbanizing. For that, you need a comprehensive terrestrial habitat monitoring program for urban areas that are so critical to manage and maintain the overall watershed function. And years of data is required. It's not just 1 year of data. I know that Credit Valley Conservation Authority and Toronto and Region Conservation Authority in the past 2 to 3 years have initiated such a program in the headwater areas of the Humber River and Etobicoke Creek in the region of Peel and York region. And we have, before I left there, they had installed piezometers in the urban areas close to the wetlands that were close to the urban areas to assess the impacts. That data, that research is still going on, and it's transferable data. It is my desire with the new planning ecologist in place at Npca that we will be developing the parameters of such a program to be included in our terrestrial monitoring program going forward. And I'm hoping this can be part of our 2022 budget as a pressure.
Great. So if you ever come across any research, I wouldn't mind having a copy of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Member K-Wall. Member Smith.
Thank you. So we heard that 15 meters is more or less the hard line. Are there any examples in Niagara of going below 15 meters? we approved any development within 15 meters of a wetland?
I will again hand that over to our senior manager, David Toulouse.
Through you, Vice Chair, in the past, under our previous policies, there were subdivisions that had buffers, typically around 10 meters was sort of a common. There were some going even further back in which buffers were almost zero. That was right in and around 2006 when our regulation was coming into effect. But again, that was one of the impetus at the time of doing the 2018 policy update to have some form of a bare minimum buffer so that you weren't getting subdivisions with buffers around 10 or less meters. So it was trying to an incremental step towards getting a larger buffer.
Thank you. I have a follow-up if you don't mind, Mr. Vice Chair.
You go ahead, Member Smith.
Yeah. So following up on Member Kwal's remarks about there is scientific reports out, I'll say defending or explaining why 30 meters, the significance of 30 meters, and there's an emptiness of reports on 15 meters, which we are using. Why wouldn't we just be migrating right back to 30 meters if we pride ourselves on being a scientific organization? And I know you gave an explanation about the planning ecologists. I'm concerned that we're waiting for reports when the information is out there, I guess is what I'm saying.
So through you, Vice Chair, if this is the wish of the board, absolutely staff can put that forward. As you know, we have started and we are in the first phase of updating our planning and development policies. And as part of this process, and when these policies are developed, there's proper consultation with the community and our municipal partners. And then ultimately these policies will come to the board. And we will also look at the research that is around. If that is what is needed, we will certainly be putting that forward to the board at the time the policies come for approval and based on proper consultation.
Thank you. We have other speakers. Member Brady.
Well, having worked in the field for quite a long time, I can say that normally when a buffer is being reduced from 30 meters to 15, which is established in a number of places across Ontario, it usually is accompanied by an EIS, and that provides the, if you will, the scientific basis for why the reduction is important on that site. So I'm not one to suggest that you just have buffers and that there's no ability to take a look at them on a detailed individual basis, because it may not make sense on an individual basis. That's why the EIS program was put in place many years ago. So as one board member, I don't think that it should simply be 30 meters and let's not look at it any further.
Thank you, Member Brady. Member Woodhouse.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I hear where Member Smith's coming from, and I'm not adverse to his way of thinking. The only concern I would have, and I guess if you set it at a 30-meter setback as a standard, and then modify it from there, that's probably a good starting point. If there are those anomalies that Member Brady's been addressing and being very experienced in the field, I accept what he says as being true. Unlike most times, a lot of times I don't, correct. But that aside, I just wonder about the logic of it, given the environmental changes that we're having with climate change and global water levels rising, and the impact it's going to have in the watershed, coming down from the north into the Great Lakes, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's a big big issue, and it goes beyond, I guess, in a way, 30 meters. So 30 meters, as I understand it, was set up based on a historical scientific evaluation as a benchmark, as I understand it. Now, if that's the case and it needs to be changed, or if it's no longer the case and it needs to be changed, then we probably should be changing it. And as the CAO has pointed out, that's under review. My concern is that like Member Smith, is that by waiting to draw a line in the sand, kind of, that it's not really solving anything. That's my concern. So I see this as, because of environmental conditions and the global warming, as more of an urgency than maybe others do. But I could be all wet, and I stand to be corrected. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Woodhouse. Member Clark.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chair. And Malcolm, I guess all wet was a bit of a pun there and probably unintended. I'm wondering, do we have policies with regards to setbacks from waterways, forests, as well as wetlands?
I will defer to our senior manager to answer that.
Through you, Vice Chair, yes, our policies, we do spell out buffer requirements for all the various features that we regulate.
And can you tell me what the buffer is for a forested area, what the buffer would be for a water course? And I understand the current buffer for wetlands. Water course for me would be river, streams, or lake.
Through you, Vice Chair, the buffers will vary depending on the feature. So, for example, a water course, if it's what we would call an unconfined water course, not part of a valley, then the buffer could be as large as 15 meters, but that can be reduced as well through appropriate study. If it's part of a valley system, the buffer typically starts at 15 meters, but can be reduced, typically in that case through a geotechnical study, as well as in some cases an environmental impact study. Forested areas in and of themselves, if it's just a straight woodlot, we do not regulate those features. But if forest is part of a wetland, then that would fall under our wetland policies.
So if we're reviewing potential buffers and rationale for buffers for wetlands, would it be wise to review all of our buffers and setbacks at the same time, given the climate change crisis and the changes that we're seeing to our natural areas?
Through you, Vice Chair, the scope of the review we are doing on the policy right now is all the different sections. So it's not just limited to wetlands. So it does look at our shorelines. It's looking at our valley land section. It's looking at water courses. It's looking at all the different sections within our document.
And I appreciate that scope is there. That's excellent. And I'm just trying to, because I've always had the concern where you have a buffer set for a wetland and then developers come in and argue, yes, but we can protect that wetland with this, this, and this, and so you can give us a much smaller buffer. When you're doing the review, what third-party expertise will be included to justify the setting of these buffers and setbacks? I'm concerned from my own viewpoint. I can't speak for anyone else. Leaving it simply to an environmental impact study on every single project is problematic. I think it would be better if we had a set standard across the entire system for all of our features. Here's the setback, this is where it is, and we govern based on being conservative with those setbacks. We are not liberal with them. We want to ensure that the features are being protected, not minimized so that more development can occur or whatever other justification, economic growth or whatever the case is. Our goal is conservation.
Through you, Chair, Vice Chair Mackenzie, to Member Clark, and David can join me in answering this question. Let me just say what you just said is exactly what we are going to do. We will set a standard with an environmental first philosophy in the policy. Following that, we will develop a procedural manual that will detail how decisions are made, and there will be guidelines for everything. This is also a public document so people can see how decisions are made. Again, there is an EIS provision for wetlands and other sensitive areas. There is also a provision for staff to go to a third party to review the EIS for us if we have any concerns about it. And finally, all of that is going to come to the board to allow us to move forward with that comprehensive set of changes. David, do you want to add something?
Sure. Through you, Vice Chair, just to the original question about what is our current practice. Our current practice right now is an environmental impact study is submitted by an applicant's consultant. However, we do review that internally with our professional staff. So we have our ecologists look at the study to make sure that they're satisfied that the study was undertaken correctly using proper field techniques, proper surveys, that they looked at the correct items they needed to look at. And even before then, the EIS requirements are scoped out with a consultant. So they would submit a terms of reference for our review. And we, based on the features that are on the site, would direct them to what needs to be studied, what we want to see in the EIS. And so then when it gets submitted, we do look at that to make sure all of that is correct. And if there's any issues we have with the EIS, any of the mitigation measures, we do flag those as part of our comments. And we work with the developer to resolve those issues to ensure that there would be no impacts to a wetland or any feature.
That I agree with everything that Chandra just said, and our staff. I think that's excellent. The last question that I have, Mr. Vice Chair, is with regards to peer reviews of the EIS. So do we have a policy with regards to when we require a peer review? Does the property owner or developer pay for that peer review? And is it possible to ensure that a peer review is done on every EIS?
Through you, Vice Chair, we don't have a policy presently for peer reviews. So there's one peer review I can think of we've done in the past, actually relatively recent. It was for the Thundering Waters Riverfront subdivision. Just due to the sensitive nature of that particular application, we decided to have the environmental impact study peer reviewed. But we can, as part of a procedural manual and as part of our policy update, look at a proper policy on peer reviews. Because right now, without having any direction in our fee schedule to costing, we would be the ones paying for the cost of that study. But again, that's something we're in the middle of reviews on our fee schedule, on our policy update, procedural manual. We can now fix that and have the right policies in place to do that.
Okay, so I would encourage that the peer review be included in any review, and I don't think we should be paying for peer reviews. If someone's coming forward with an EIS that we have questions about, then we can go to a third party that we have comfort with for a peer review, but the developer should be paying for that peer review. We shouldn't be putting that burden on the taxpayers, in my opinion. So those are all my comments, and I just hope that we can include the peer review in the review that you're doing, Madam CAO. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Clark. Now I'm looking at the screen. I can't see all the faces. Speak up if there's anybody else that'd like to contribute to the discussion.
Member Wright here.
Go ahead, Member Wright.
I'm just wondering who sets the scope of the EISs. For instance, is it Npca? Is there a standard scope? And for wetlands, for instance, does that include a hydrogeological component or not? Since obviously a hydrogeologic component should be a very key factor in wetlands. And I'm just wondering if they all have that, or who sets the scope. Thank you.
Member Wright, I'm going to suggest that question you hold on to that question because it gets into the nitty gritty, and I'm looking forward, I think, as well to all the other members to a report from staff as to laying out the new policy. I think that's what I hear will be coming to this board, and we can. And that would be a better time to get down into that detail after we see what staff is proposing. Is that all right with you, Member Wright?
Sure. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I saw another hand.
It's Bill?
Bill, Member Rapley, thank you.
Through you, Vice Chair Bruce, I made the comments. Brad Clark and Chandra are really good for the future planning. We have several things. The Niagara region plan has built in quite a bit of biodiversity and ecology potential systems for the future. So when that gets finalized, we see what's left after it goes through all the processes. We may get some positive feedback there from the point of view of ecology. The Ministry of Natural Resources used to play a really significant role when it came to going in and examining wetlands, thinking of Thundering Waters and thinking of Waverly Woods and this type of thing. They seem to, I'll be careful how I say this, but they seem to be hammered almost out of existence right now. And that is concerning because they would be a great body to be able to say, hey, we would like an assessment here from the ministry, but that is problematic. That may change in the future. The other thing is there is great concern, have to mention Thundering Waters, what was approved there, and also the proposals at Waverly regarding wetlands and setbacks and housing distances and all this type of thing.
Yeah. Member Rapley
are massive.
Yeah. Member Rapley, in the consideration of time, do you have a question of staff at this time?
No, it's just leave it that Chandra's working on this, and we have great faith in what she'll come up with, and we'll take a look at that. But there are a lot of concerns out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Rapley, and I certainly we certainly hear clearly the interest of the board in the subject of buffer zones, and I look forward to, along with all of us, further updates from staff on this. We still have a motion on the floor to accept the report FA 2421. It's been moved in second. We've had discussion. Any objections to the motion? Okay, I declare it carried. Thank you very much. And now we move on to discussion items. First one is 8A, report number FA 2221, Niagara Coastal Community Collaborative Partnership MOU for approval. Madam CAO, do we have someone to speak to this item?
To you, Vice Chair McKenzie, Jeff Burkade, our senior manager, is here, as well as Gregory Ford, as Madam Chair introduced at the beginning of the meeting, from Coastal Stewardship, from Niagara Coastal Community Collaborative is here, and they can both take the questions.
Thank you. Mr. Burkade, please begin.
Sure, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. this MOA is to enshrine some of the requirements we have with an agreement for funding that we got through the provincial government through the Great Lakes Local Action Fund. It's a partnership between Npca and the Niagara Coastal Collaborative Community, which has mobilized a lot of the stakeholders along the Lake Erie Lakeshore for nature-based solutions, healthy coastal ecosystems, habitat and species and whatnot. And when we looked at the funding opportunity, we decided to pursue a citizen science oriented project to collect some visual information that would engage the community in appreciating what's going on their coast with respect to the changes because of climate change and whatnot. So happy to announce that we were successful. So that will be moving forward this year. Greg can speak to more of the details, but this memorandum of agreement is largely there to enshrine the financial covenants between us, as they will be accepting some of the Great Lakes money from us to do the implementation. So I'll defer to Greg now for more of the project details.
Good morning, Greg. Just before you begin, Mr. Vercade, for my understanding, this memorandum of understanding, is between what parties again?
Actually, oh yeah, through you, well, I'm speaking directly to you, so I will. It's not a MOU per se. I'm not sure how that wound up on the agenda. It's actually a memorandum of agreement because it's more of a conditional type of agreement, again, because of those financial agreements. But it's between the Npca and the Niagara Coastal Collaborative Community. They are an environmental non-government organization that looks at doing healthy ecosystem stuff on the Lake Erie shoreline.
Just Lake Erie, you say?
I believe they have desires to move on to Lake Ontario as well, and I would defer to Greg to speak to their vision moving forward.
Thank you. And good morning again, Greg. Please tell us what we need to know.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Hello, everyone. I just want to give you a little bit of a heads up that my Robert's rules are a little bit rusty, so please bear with me. But I can provide a little bit of information that you may need to know. So the Niagara Coastal Community Collaborative, or the Collaborative, or Niagara Coastal, whatever you prefer, is a collective approach to environmental governance that brings together ENGOs, educational institutes, citizen groups, and municipal, provincial, and federal governments with the common agenda of optimizing and expanding local capacity and action to build a healthy Lake Erie coastal ecosystem. As Mr. Vercade did say, we do have some future plans in the works to expand to Lake Ontario as well, and throughout the Lake Erie shoreline, even outside of the Npca jurisdiction. So this project that we applied for funding from the Great Lakes Local Action Fund from the province of Ontario was for the Visual Assessment Survey Tool, or VAST. This project aims to address existing coastal data gaps in the Lake Erie shoreline of the Niagara Peninsula by blending science, storytelling, and communications technology to generate actionable community-based monitoring data and information to influence local and regional coastal decision-making. So as Mr. Vercade indicated, this is a partnership between the Npca, Niagara College, and Niagara Coastal Community Collaborative. The idea is to engage citizen scientists in obtaining data through citizen science surveys, photo point monitoring stations, and regular area drone surveys of priority areas along the Lake Erie coast, looking for specific coastal issues. Those issues that are identified thus far are washout and nuisance cladophora algae, which has been linked to virulence conditions, the breeding of E. coli bacteria, and causing botulism outbreaks in avian populations. And a second survey will be developed to track coastal erosion and deposition, as well as fluctuating water levels on the Lake Erie shoreline. This tool will display all of the data that's generated on a public platform that will create what we're hoping will be a real-time network of evolving coastal conditions. And the tool is designed as the first step in the development of an adaptive management coastal decision support tool. So the near real-time coastal observations will be used by coastal managers like the Npca and other organizations to inform restoration, policy, and strategic direction of coastal decisions.
Okay, thank you for your report. Do I have, this is a report for approval, so I will take as moving the report Member Fior, second by Member Woodhouse. Any questions or discussion from the members? Yes, Member Brady.
I very much support this initiative. We did, I believe the coalition was involved in Fort Erie a couple of years ago when I was there, and I found the information that they provided to be quite helpful. So I very much support this initiative.
Thank you, Member Brady. Any other members? Okay, I don't see any other hands or hear anything, so I'm going to call the question. Are there any objections? Seeing none, I see that this is approved. Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Ford, for coming to be with us today, and thanks, Mr. Verkade. Our next report is FA 2721, Npca Section 28 Regulation Mapping for approval. Madam CAO, can you provide direction as to where this discussion will, how this discussion will proceed?
To you, Vice Chair McKenzie. This is what's in front of you relates back to the discussion we just had on the wetlands. Just so board members knows, and it's well elaborated in the report, that regulation mapping shows the area within our jurisdiction that are likely to be subject to regulation. Again, it's not a statutory map, which means that the mapping does not have the force of law. It's actually sets out the regulatory kind of vision on the ground, on the map, to allow us to make decisions on the applications. And again, the information on the map is verified on the ground. So the mapping, just for everybody's information, is best considered as a screening tool for Npca municipalities and the public who are developing in the regulated areas. The report is in front of you, has 4 recommendations in line or in alignment with our policy update. The first one is that we first do some housekeeping, update our map by the end of this year with the known changes. And it's a standard practice with every conservation authority that these maps are updated as we go. So we have some catching up to do. This is my understanding in talking to staff. So we need to do that first. And then as we are doing that, there are some new features on the ground that need proper studies, that need to be included in the map, and that's phase 2. So by the end of this, we'll complete phase 1. Staff will bring a work plan to the board for phase 2 work. And at that point, the board will approve that work plan. And towards the end of next year, or whatever the timeline might be, the board will approve the final regulatory map at that point. So this is what we are launching right now in conjunction with the fee review, the planning policies, and all the other work we are doing. It's an integral part of our regulatory responsibility at the Npca. David and I can, and Jeff is here, can take any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much. And just before I take questions, did I recognize a mover and seconder for this yet?
No, you have not.
Thank you, Mr. Beeble. Moved by Member Houston, second by Member Wright. Thank you. And so members that may have questions or discussion. Member K-Wall.
Thank you. I read in your briefing note that it says that the mapping actually does not indicate areas where development is prohibited, and you go on from there. Niagara region is currently in the process of having dialogue and moving towards implementing a natural heritage system. It's my understanding that that natural heritage system, whatever it looks like, when approved, will actually prohibit where development happens and where it doesn't happen. My question to you is, would it not make sense to wait until that is done before you start to do the mapping? And I only ask that suggestion in that you may go out and do a mapping in an area where the Niagara Natural Heritage System says development is prohibited, and then the effort may have been for naught. So just a question on timing of your work relative to what Niagara is doing.
Thank you, Chair Keval. I will get David to respond to that, but let me just start by saying this is related to our regulatory responsibilities. We have to do our own work and not rely on other agencies' mapping. David, take it on from there.
Thank you. Through you, Vice Chair. That's a very true point. Our regulatory mapping is based purely on our legislation. So we have prescribed, call them features, that we have to look at. Now, yes, they do overlap with features protected by other levels of government, but the statement that the screening map is not doesn't indicate areas where development cannot occur. For example, if you have an area that is within the, say, the region's natural heritage system, the official plan, that at the end of the day, that's all it is. It's an official plan map, and then it follows official plan policies. Those policies, unless the zoning bylaw of the individual municipality exactly matches those policies, then there may still be some form of development permitted, not a subdivision or something like that, but if somebody wants to put up a garden shed or construct a trail or some sort of landscape feature, those are also, especially under our legislation, those are also development activities, which may or may not be permitted depending on the scope, nature, and location of the activity itself. So just because something falls under the region's natural heritage system, that typically only gets triggered when you're looking at a Planning Act application. But the zoning bylaw in the lower tier municipality is what will dictate from a municipal perspective what can and cannot happen on a property. But our regulation, again, is separate from that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you to staff. Member Cridlin, see a hand.
Thank you. Thank you through you, Vice Chair. Could you just expand a little bit more on this, the rollout? So I'm interested in, the consulting process, which you've highlighted, but also what will drive the priority of where you will focus the mapping, the beginning of the mapping process. So, for example, will this begin in a more urban setting because of the need or whatever matrix you use to start the work? So could you just expand a little bit on how the work will work through the watershed? Thank you.
So through you, Vice Chair McKenzie, just to be very clear, first of all, currently we have a regulatory map that is updated every year. So we are using that. It's based on MNR guidelines for regulatory map for our conservation authorities through Conservation Ontario. So we use that. It includes things like, as you know, we are updating our floodplain maps, so floodlines. So it's all based on technical studies. So we map floodplain, stream, rivers, Lake Ontario shoreline. You have seen some reports come to you on Lake Ontario shoreline, approvals, and valley lands, and that sort of information. Then there's also an option to include additional information as you go forward, right? And David, I'm going to then hand it over to you now to explain that.
So thank you through you, Vice Chair. So for example, in phase one, we will be looking at making corrective changes to the mapping. So as part of that process, we will be meeting with municipalities, our various municipal partners, to better understand what issues they've noticed with the mapping in terms of maintenance issues. Typically, municipalities, they rely heavily on our screening maps for determining whether or not they need to circulate us for building permits or planning applications. And they also are very in tune with areas where maybe there's a portion of the screening map that covers something that is not actually a regulated feature, or mapping inconsistencies where subdivision was done in the past and the mapping lines were never updated to reflect that. So unfortunately, there are some of those instances around, and working with our municipal partners, we will identify that. But moving forward into phase 2, we, as CAO Chandra said, there will be studies done at those times to bring in broader features that either weren't mapped, or, for example, wetlands, the mapping is getting older and there needs to be a more wholesome review of those type of features. We will be doing a more fulsome public consultation process. In the cases where there's corrective issues with mapping, if you're simply removing a feature that's not there, you don't necessarily need to get heavily into the consultation. Or in some cases, if it's been development approved through a permit, the individual property owner affected by that is aware of the change. Therefore, again, the consultation has taken place. But once you start doing bigger changes, when you start adding new areas that affect more than one property, then you start to need to look at broader public consultation. So we will be looking at those studies at an individual basis. Similar, for example, the floodplain mapping. That's an example of such a study. And each study would have its own component of public consultation before it gets brought before the board for adoption into the mapping officially.
Thank you, David. Member Cridlin, does that answer your question?
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
It sounds like it's the phase 2 plans that I'm talking about. So thanks very much.
Pleasure. Member Hewson.
Thank you, through you, Vice Chair McKenzie. I guess my question is this the mapping that's available online for the Npca Watershed Explorer? It is. Okay, so this mapping is available online publicly, and whoever wants to interact with it can do so. Okay, great. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Member Hewson. Any other members wishing to contribute? Okay, so we have a motion on the floor for approval, and any objections? I'm not seeing or hearing of any, so I move the motion carried. Thank you very much. Our next report is FA 2521, expanding the Greenbelt proposal, Npca comments for approval. Madam CAO, can I ask you to begin this discussion? But before that, I will take as moving this motion Member Beatty, second by Member Raplin. Madam CAO.
Thank you, Vice Chair McKenzie. Senior Manager David Deleuze will speak to this report.
Through you, Vice Chair. There's not a lot to say about the report, really, but just briefly, the province is undertaking public consultation for expanding the Greenbelt, but they're focusing primarily on a couple of defined geographies that are located outside of our watershed. So we didn't really have much in the way of comments to say about that. We're supportive, obviously, of growing anything in the Greenbelt, but we'll leave that for those particular municipalities, agencies to get it more into the specifics about it. The other area that the Greenbelt Plan initiative was, or a growing initiative, was looking at are urban river valleys. And those, they're specifically defined in the Greenbelt Plan through the policy framework there. Typically, they have to be in a municipality that is an urban area not within the Greenbelt Plan. And in our watershed, the only municipality that is just outside of the Greenbelt Plan and has a connection directly into a Great Lake, for example, Lake Ontario, is St. Catharines. And that municipality already has Lower 12 Mile Creek designated as an urban river valley. We looked at other systems within some of the smaller municipalities, Grimsby, for example, 40 Mile Creek. The challenge there is that municipality is technically a settlement area within the Greenbelt Plan, and it's technically in the Greenbelt Plan. Therefore, it would not qualify by definition as an urban river valley. So it's already within the Greenbelt Plan itself. Again, urban river valleys were only applied to municipalities that are outside of the Greenbelt and urban areas outside the Greenbelt. So anything outside of the urban area, again, does not qualify by definition. We did have a couple of recommendations to the province for inclusion of some major watercourses into the Greenbelt Natural Heritage System, and we put that forward in our comments to Conservation Ontario.
Thank you, David. Any questions or comments for discussion from the members? Okay. Seeing none or hearing of none, we have the motion. Any objections? Don't see or hear of any, so the motion is carried. Thank you very much. That's the end of the discussion items. We're now into committee reports. First one is item 9.1.1, minutes of the governance committee meeting dated March 11th, 2001 for receipt. And I'll take for movers. A mover of this is Member Steele, seconded by, oh, I see an empty bench. That's okay. Member Wright, and I'm going to ask Member Foster, Chair of the Governance, if there's any comment. Well, first of all, this is for receipt. Any discussion by members for this?
So do you want me? I was just going to say, Bruce, that the
please go ahead.
Yeah, the meeting was pretty straightforward. The items we went through, so I don't have an awful lot to add to it at this point.
Thanks very much, and again, and to you, Member Foster, thank you for your diligence in chairing this committee on top of all the other duties that you have in the community. Okay, so motion's on the floor. Any objections? Seeing none, move it carried. Next report is 9.1.2, which is FA 2121 Reintegrity Commissioner Services for approval. Moving this, Member Clark. Seconding it is Member Hewson. And Madam CAO, I'm going to ask you to lead any discussion on this item. This is for approval.
Thank you, Chair Vice Chair McKenzie. Misty Frusi, who is our Manager of Human Resources, will speak to this report.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you. Through you, Chair, this report is very similar to a previous report that we put forward. We've had discussion about engaging in Integrity Commissioner Services, and we are looking for approval to execute agreement with the Integrity Commissioners as outlined in this report and as reviewed with the Governance Committee. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay. I don't see any hands up or hear any voices. Thank you, Misty, for your report. Calling this the vote on this motion, and any objections? Seeing and hearing none, I declare it carried. Thank you very much. Our next report is 9.1.913 FA 2321 Governance Committee 2021 Work Plan for approval. Moving this is Member Fior, second by Member Beattie. And I'm going to ask Member Foster to lead any discussion that we might have on this.
We had a good discussion at our committee on all of these items. I'd prefer actually if CAO Sharma wants to highlight any of these particular items within it, because I know this fits in well to her overall work plan as well. So if I can leave it at that.
You certainly can. Thank you, Member Foster. Madam CAO.
Thank you, Vice Chair Mackenzie. First of all, I want to thank all the members of the Governance Committee. Last year was a very intense year, and we accomplished lots under that leadership. This year, going forward, I think our focus primarily will be on changes that are coming on governance issue from the recent changes to the Conservation Authority Act. So this committee is going to focus on all of those matters. Towards the end of the year, we also, if the regulations come into play and everything is approved, and if the transition provisions in the CA Act do not allow us to leave this issue to later, I think this year the Governance Committee will be helping us with the MOUs and service level agreements with the municipalities, the regulations around our mandated, non-mandated programs. All of that information will be dealt with here. We're also working on several human resources issues in tandem, working on an HR plan. There'll be some new policies coming to the committee. So that's going to be a priority as well. Just so you know, it was part of the Auditor General's report and recommendation. There is a component of board member evaluation. That work was completed by board members last year. We have a matrix in place. Board members individually and collectively evaluate themselves this year to be ready for next year. So that's all I have to report on this, and thank you for your ongoing support.
It's a pleasure, and I'm speaking for everybody, Madam CAO. Thank you for your report. So we have a motion on the floor. Any discussion from the members? Seeing and hearing none, I declare it carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to 9.2, Strategic Planning Committee. 9.2.1, minutes of the Strategic Planning Committee meeting dated March 19th, 2021. This is for receipt of the minutes. I'm going to note as moving this is Member Wright and second it Member Ingrail. Madam C, Strategic Planning. Member K-Wall, is there anything that you'd like to lead the discussion with?
No, thank you. The minutes are pretty straightforward, so.
Thank you, Member K-Wall. Any discussion from members? Okay, seeing none, I declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is notices of motion. Are there any? Okay, I don't see any. Thank you. Item 11 on the agenda is motions. I've had the pleasure of bringing one, and Chair Johnson, I will ask if you may take back the chair for the time being.
Thank you. I have the chair. We're going to motions, and this is the Enhancing Trails of the Npca Watershed, and it's been moved by Vice Chair Mackenzie. Vice Chair Mackenzie, you're on.
Thank you very much. So I'd like to take this opportunity, first of all, by thanking Member Hewson for providing direction to me in preparing this motion for your consideration. And it's in the agenda. I'll read it out for those.
Thank you.
For the public who may not have the agenda. Whereas the motion is entitled Enhancing Trails in the Npca Watershed. Whereas the public has shown a strong desire and need to be out in nature in in the Npca watershed and across Ontario, and it has been demonstrated that being in nature benefits our physical and mental health. Whereas the province and the region of Niagara have identified the population of Niagara is expected to grow by 226,000 people, or 50% by 2051. Whereas the popularity of the present community connecting trails like the Friendship Trail, Niagara River Waterfront Trail, Seaway Canal Trail, the Fasco Trail, and the Gord Harry Trail is well documented. Whereas there are a large number of unopened road allowances and abandoned rail lines and other possible corridors that are presently not accessible to the public, that have the capability of making physical connections between municipalities in Niagara and with Hamilton and Haldimand County. Whereas conservation authorities, including the Npca, have shown to be agencies that can plan for and develop trails through their watersheds. Now therefore be it resolved that the Npca, being the agency with 2,845 hectares of public land connecting Niagara, Hamilton, and Haldimand, convene a form to bring agencies and municipalities in its watershed together to facilitate the planning and development of an interjurisdictional trails network connecting municipalities, neighborhood, employment areas, and nature destinations. That Npca municipalities be encouraged to adopt through their official plan updates expanded trail networks using publicly owned corridors, abandoned rail lines, and other opportunities. 3, that Npca staff explore formal partnership opportunities with municipalities to map, build, and enhance trail connections, and further, that a copy of this motion be circulated to the local and regional municipalities within the Npca's jurisdiction. Thank you.
Thank you, Member McKenzie, and I'm assuming that it was seconded by Member Hewson.
If she would be so kind.
Yes, please.
I figured you would be, and it's a well done. Thank you very much, Vice Chair McKenzie. I think this is going to be very exciting if it can go with all the municipalities' partnerships. So are there any comments or any questions for the mover or the staff? Member Hewson, please.
Yeah, I was really excited to work. Well, this is all Bruce. I gave him a little bit of tips, but he put it all together, and I'm really excited to see this. We did have, just as an FYI, we had our planning and act dev committee at the region this week, and things that they recognized was, or that we approved, was movement towards starting conversations around access of land as part of the new Glendale Niagara district plan. So it was, and there was quite a bit of discussion around, you know, how do we encourage more green spaces and access to more trails and pathways. So I think there is political will behind these things, but I think, as Bruce has mentioned, we really need the lower tier municipalities who have responsibility for recreation, at least in Niagara, to recognize this and be partners on this. And just as another update, when we're talking about partnership opportunities, I was I'm on the Tom's Active Transportation Committee, and asked, you know, is there a forum for all of the active transportation committees of the municipalities to have a discussion? And I was told there is an active transportation network, and I think that that committee, which brings it together those partners, would really benefit from the Npca participating in some way. I think those are like-minded groups. I'd love to see us all working together, because those groups would know more closely what assets are in the individual municipalities, and are, you know, have connections to their our city municipalities, and may be able to get some headway on these things. So that's an update and a suggestion, but very happy to see the motion, and thank you for bringing it forward.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Member I see Member Kaywell. Was your hand up or were you stretching? I'm sorry? No? Okay, thank you, Member Brady. Nope. Can you, there you go. I didn't know if you had unmuted yourself. Go ahead.
Thank you. I think that's a great idea, Bruce. I have one question for our CAO. What is the impact of dealing with this motion in terms of staffing? How much time would there be to commit to this? I asked that from the perspective of a long time ago. I was at the region, and we tried at that time to deal with the establishment of some trails which got developed. And I can tell you it took 1.5 staff members full-time commitment to be able to get this kind of activity moving forward. Now, I'm sure the Conservation Authority is much more able to get things moving faster than it was way back in the 80s. But nonetheless, I'm somewhat concerned about the amount of staff time that needs to be dealt with to effectively deal with this motion.
CIO Sharma, comment, please.
I'm glad that you asked that question, and I'm gonna take that question and give you a broader answer instead of just specific to the trails. I am going to say that we have amazing staff and we get things done really fast, and we are nimble as well. And we're doing a lot of work, and there's a lot of work need to be done. There is an expectation of the board and community for NPCA to do more. And we are excited, we are happy to do more. But I am going to tell the board that as we go forward with this and a lot of other things that are on our plate, we will be taking a closer look at what our staffing needs are, and this will come to you as we proceed with these things and go forward. Right now, we are making it work. We are managing our time, but I must say that NPCA's jurisdiction and the kind of activity that is happening in NPCA jurisdiction and the opportunities we have to do some good environmental work here is very similar to any large conservation authority. And when we look at the budget and staffing, we're not at par. So I'm here all excited, staff are excited. We want to do a lot of work, but we need to address this gap. That's all I would say right now.
Thank you, Member Brady. You still have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you for that response, Madam CAO. I think, though, that the board needs to have some notion as to the magnitude of what this motion actually brings forward. To be quite honest, based on my experience in municipalities, I see this motion bring at least the need for a half a person to the Conservation Authority. As long as the board members are all aware of that means that we'll be going back to our member municipalities and asking for, substantial increases in terms of the amount of money that's going to be required in staffing. I'm fine with that. But I think we need, as a board, to be very aware that when we bring forth motions like this, that there are issues associated with it. And Bruce, I think it's a great motion. Diana, I don't get me wrong. I just think that I know the size and the magnitude of the Conservation Authority staff. And I also am well aware, I was involved way back with the Friendship Trail and the amount of time that the town of Fort Erie had to be involved in that, and the city of Port Colborne as well. It's a lot of work. It's an awful lot of work. And so let's move forward with this with our eyes wide open.
Good comment. Thank you. Go ahead, Sharma.
Sorry to interrupt, and through you, Vice Chair Mackenzie, if I may also add that this motion, I Member Mackenzie did check with me, and I'm supportive. I'm excited. and I helped him with the wordsmithing of this as well. Npca management team has started doing some trail work already. We know there is a lot of gap on our own trails in our own conservation areas. So we have launched, as of this year, internally, there's a lot of work going on that doesn't come to the board until we are ready to bring it to the board. So I should say, with our stewardship team, with our parks team, we have started working on something like this. We are trying to understand, NRGIS team, we're trying to understand what the current gaps are, what hazards are, our communication with the community on trail, our connections, not only just with municipalities, but also with Bruce Trail Association, our agreements with Bruce Trail Association and other partners who connect with our trails. All this work has started as phase one work, and we are doing a gap analysis with the known data and known information that we have at hand. So this is nothing new. We are starting to think about it. It's part of our strategic plan. What I wanted the board to understand, not just this, there's lots to be done, and we are on it. You just heard about all the policy work that we are doing. So this is a real issue for me right now. Okay? But I'm supportive of this. I'm very supportive of this. This is the work we should be doing.
Thank you. And I have Member Woodhouse, then Member Clark. Anyone else? Thank you. Member Fior. So we'll just start with Member Woodhouse. Just wave at me if you want to be put on the list. Member Woodhouse, you're first.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm fully supportive of this. I'm a little surprised because I think it's the first thing Bruce really came up with, which was a good idea. But I don't see him smiling there. Is that a fixed picture?
You can't see my hand, Malcolm.
I think it's a great idea, and I would just say that it goes without saying that there's obviously time and commitment made and finances that are going to be made to bring this to fruition and to develop it. But I think that's it's well worth that effort, and I think it if you look at any of the other trails that have been established, and I look at Pelham, for example, the Steve Bauer Trail was a rail line, as I recall. Well, that same rail line, just for your information, I was mayor at the time, we bought the rest of it all the way to the Welland Canal, but it's never been developed. It's never been developed. That rail line sits there, and it connects to the Stephen Bauer Trail. So there's all kinds of those kind of things out there that this issue would hopefully include. So I would offer as well, Madam Chair, that if there's any involvement that is needed in this project, I'd be more than happy to offer my time and effort to help out in any way that felt necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Woodhouse. And I have Member Clark, then Member Fior. Member Clark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. When I read this motion, it doesn't bring to mind an immediate demand for extra resources, because I don't think this is an immediate, we're going to get all the trails put in Niagara right across the area all at once. I see it as a phased approach. When I look at item number 1, I see it as, let's meet with the agencies and municipalities more specifically, because we want to understand whether or not any municipalities have an interest in this. They may be overloaded themselves right now with everything that's going on with COVID and everything else, and this is not an interest for them right now. But there may be 1 or 2 municipalities in the Niagara area that have a trail area that they're interested in pursuing and working with the Npca on. So I see it, if we do it in a phased approach, I think we will be much more successful. I know that when I was with the Hamilton Conservation Area on their foundation many years ago, we were buying rail trails as the former rail lines, as was just mentioned by the former member. But the trail system that Hamilton has developed with the Hamilton Conservation Area did not happen overnight. It took a very long time and you can see how it has come to fruition. And I can tell you, it is incredibly busy. The people love the trails. They love the conservation areas. They love the connectivity between city parks and conservation areas. So I think there's a real benefit to us looking at it. I just wanted to highlight, though, if the expectation is that this is going to turn around in short order, it's not going to happen. I think Chandra's bang on that it's going to take some resources, and it'll happen over time, and that's how we will be successful. But I think it's an excellent motion. I think it's a great vision. I think if we work with the municipalities and agencies and the foundation, because what I found when I was with the Hamilton Regional Conservation Foundation is that working directly with the city, directly with the Conservation Authority and all of the agencies, we uncovered donors who were willing to contribute money to the purchase of these rail lines and the lands that are required for the trail. So it really has to be, as Bruce has put it forward, as a collaborative model with all stakeholders working together. So I'm fully supportive. I think this is excellent. The resource issue doesn't scare me at the moment, Chandra, because I don't think we're going to try and do this all at once, because it's not possible. Even if you had 10 more staff, it would be a Herculean effort to do this all at once. So I commend Bruce and Diana for putting this together. I think it's an excellent motion, and it's a real vision in terms of where we should be going in the future. So right on. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Member Fiore, then Member Foster, and then we'll wrap this up if you don't mind, folks, just looking at the time. Oh, sorry, Member Beatty. So Member Fiore, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I fully support the motion and thank Member McKenzie, Member Houston for bringing it forward. I like what Member Brady had to say. I think it added to the conversation. Not to always lean on grants, but there are new grants that are popping up right now in light of circumstances, and a lot of them do point to active transportation, community building. So something that not only that we could apply for, but we can make the municipalities aware of. So the Ontario Community Building Fund, that's up for application until April 28th. So I just threw that one in the chat. And then the formerly referred to as the Gas Tax Fund in Canada is now called the Canada Community Building Fund. And I believe the federal government doubled the funding this year. So that's also something that I think if we pool our resources as all municipalities within the watershed, we should be able to address those resource issues when they come up. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Member Foster, then Member Beatty. Member Foster.
Yes, thank you, Chair Johnson. So just a couple of quick things. By the way, I completely support this. This is great. The discussion Member Brady had regarding budget and stuff like that, something that's going to be with everything going into next year, no matter what. If everybody hasn't quite realized yet, it's going to be a horrible year next year for budget on a wide variety of levels. So my expectation is, we're going to have to pick and choose where we're going and how we're dealing with it going into 2022. And just a quick comment, this is going to really dovetail nicely with municipalities already. I guess I can really only speak about Lincoln because of my history there, but there's a tremendous trails and pathways program that's already in place. They have a master plan that's in place there, and so this should dovetail nicely. I think the town of Lincoln in particular would really quite enjoy going to the next step with a variety of these things, particularly with the new development there as well. So anyway, thanks, guys.
Okay, thank you. Member Beatty, last speaker. Go ahead.
Yes, it is a good idea. It was also a good idea in 2018 when the previous board suggested it. And I would refer staff to the 2018-2021 strategic plan, page 20. or a similar plan was put forward in that strategic plan. And I would ask staff maybe to look, the file may have been opened and started, so there may be some information in that file. Somebody want to go and have a look for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Beatty. So it has been moved and seconded. Discussion is finished. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, thank you. And folks, I would like to ask my fellow municipal elected officials who sit on this board to help push their municipalities to support this letter and when it arrives on your blotters. So thank you very much, everyone. So now we are on to new business. So we're going to have a verbal update from the CAO, and then we're going to take it over to the verbal update from the Vice Chair on the Conservation Ontario meeting, and then a verbal update from our member Foster, who sits on the foundation. So we'll start off with the CAO, please.
Thank you. Through Madam Chair, can I please ask our Vice Chair, who was kind enough to spend more than half a day with Conservation Ontario and participated to do that, and then a member Foster to do the foundation update because he has some new responsibilities there. So I'll ask those two first to go, and then I have a few updates.
Fair enough. Vice Chair Mackenzie, thank you so much for attending. What's the scoop?
My pleasure, Chair Johnson. Members, I had the pleasure of representing the Npca at the Conservation Ontario Annual General Meeting on April 12th. It was its first meeting since December of last year, when Bill 229 was the prime focus of the meeting. Overall, I am pleased to report that Conservation Ontario is running well and leading the way with so many files. I must compliment the quality of the board chairs, vice chairs, and Conservation Authority staff, and the Conservation Ontario staff that are around the Conservation Ontario table. The work of conservation authorities across this province does attract the right people today. For those who may not be familiar with the role of Conservation Ontario, I would suggest a visit to their website. The list of their responsibilities and objectives is long. I will quickly run through the discussion and the consent items that were on the agenda, but before I do that, I just wanted to update the board on some important aspects of the work that was precipitated by Bill 229. As you may recall, after considerable feedback that the province received on Bill 229 and Schedule 6, the province put a working group together to review how Schedule 6 would be implemented. This group is led by the CAO of the Halton Conservation Authority, Mr. Hassan Bassett. The Conservation Ontario Board was informed by Mr. Bassett that phase 1 of the work for the group is almost completed, and in about 2 weeks, their work should be ready for public review. Phase 1 looked at the Conservation Authority mandated programs and services, municipal agreements, and transition plans for non-mandatory programs, consolidation of Section 29 regulations, community advisory boards, and Section 28 regulation updates. Phase 2 will focus on the municipal levy and non-mandatory programs and services. Mr. Bassett spoke very well of the process and the people involved. Details of the discussion are not available at this time because of the confidentiality agreements. He suggested that a public consultation guide focused on questions regarding the intent of the regulations will be released after the report from the working group has been received by the province, assimilated, and finalized. He also suggested there would be a 60-day comment period after the document was released for public review, and that it would be very important for the conservation authorities across the province to work with their municipal partners to get their comments, our comments, and messaging to the province during the comment period. Parallel to this, it was noted that CEO that Conservation Ontario has written to the province asking for clarification of liabilities for the liability of conservation authorities in regard to administered zoning orders. And to date, the province has not responded to that request. The strategic plan for Conservation Ontario is being renewed, as is ours. A detailed report was provided. Strategy Corp is the coordinating firm for their plan, as well as it is for the Npca new strategic plan. There were many agenda items, and I'll just quickly go over some that I thought were pertinent to ourselves. One was working towards the creation of a clean water agency in Canada. Update on the Green Infrastructure Ontario Coalition. Regulatory posting of the Public Lands Act, the Drainage Act, regulatory proposal to require municipal support for new or increased bottled water takings, Ontario class environmental assessment, and flooding strategy and federal flood mapping updates. Madam Chair, that's my report, and there are many more other details that if a member wanted to contact me, or Madam CAO, I'd only be glad to provide more details. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair McKenzie. That's very helpful. And thank you for your time and showing support to Conservation Ontario and sending them a follow-up email. That was very nice. They need all the encouragement and support from us to keep the Conservation Authority family together and encourage peer-to-peer learning. I can now go to Member Foster for the foundation update.
Thank you, Madam CAO, and through the chair. So a couple of things been going on with the foundation. We had our annual general meeting on April the 8th, as well as a board meeting after that. Went through a number of items at that particular board meeting. Officially confirmed Ms. Cridland as a board member as well. Donna and I are representing the Npca there now. Let's see. A couple of things came out of this. So, by the way, the members of the board are Tom and Sinna as chair. Again, Gail Wood is stepping in as vice chair. I am the treasurer of the foundation, and also on the board are Donna Cridland and Mickey DeFrugio. And our next board meeting coming up in May, we're going to be looking at expanding by a couple of members. There's a process that we're going through based on matrix-based that we are looking at new members to come on to that particular board. It's going to be, by the way, incremental. We do have openings for approximately 7 members based on the board governance, but we will not be bringing on 7 members right away. It's going to be an incremental approach that we're doing. Just to let you know, with the foundation, we have done away with the tear-style lottery tickets that we had across Niagara. And what's happened with that is the monies have been resolved on a municipality by municipality basis where those funds were. So we're working with the Npca from the foundation side of things to make sure that those dollars are outlined and going to be spent accordingly on capital projects within our Npca areas. I know Adam has been working with us on potential changes at Ball Falls, which would be part of the lottery figure for the town of Lincoln. Just to let you know, Andrea Crosby, we have her now on full-time hours within it. So she's our executive coordinator there. We've been doing a lot of work on consolidating information and doing our outreach to previous donors, and also providing some of our programming that's coming up. And speaking of programming, that's my own segue. We're doing a speaker series within the foundation. Our first was this past April 14th with Mark Zielinski. We had about 80 people online that were taking part in this. We had a donation, and we're looking at this all the way along. We're looking at donations to help support the speaker series, but the idea on behalf of the foundation is to get people re-engaged with the foundation itself, and going from there. So that was pretty much it. CAO Sharma, as well as Chair Johnson, attended our meetings this past week, and that was very much appreciated as well. So just quickly to Donna, do you have any other comments from your first go around?
No, thank you. It was a very big meeting for a first meeting, and we accomplished, I think, a great deal. So you've done a great recap. And again, obviously there's lots ahead, so stay tuned. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Member Foster, for that brief update. I have 3 or 4 things to bring you up to speed on. The first is the strategic plan. So our process for the strategic plan is progressing really well. First phase, and thank you for your participation. It was over 90%, as similar to staff. Looks like board members and staff are having some sort of a competition of who provide more input to this process. So our first phase of comprehensive public engagement plan has been launched now. A public survey link can be found at the Get Involved Npca.ca site. The survey will be open until May the 6th. And if people cannot fill an online survey, they can order a hard copy survey by calling us or emailing at stratplan@npca.ca. They can receive a copy and provide input. We're looking forward to public input on that. This is our first opportunity at the beginning of the process, and there'll be another opportunity for public input when we are close to finalizing the plan. I would also like to brief you on our volunteer awards. In celebration of National Volunteer Week next week, NPCA Volunteer Awards of Merit will be announced. Thank you to all NPCA volunteers for your dedication to our watershed. Due to the pandemic, we're not able to host the Conservation Awards this year in person, but we have decided to highlight these winners and thank all volunteers during the National Volunteer Week, which is coming up next week. Staff training. A number of NPCA staff successfully completed a very comprehensive Conservation Ontario Level 1 compliance and enforcement training this week. And we also have other training opportunities coming up for staff. In regards to parks and our digital transformation, I'm really pleased to report that as part of our digital transformation efforts, a new park reservation system was completed on March 26th. The new campground reservation and park management system called KMS was active. And as of today, the new system has processed 719 reservations. So that's a very, very successful project. I will not talk about the number value because you'll get too excited. So we hope to have our membership phases and hunting permits and membership passes and hunting permits and all other programs and service offering through this reservation system. Really pleased how it has worked out. Thank you to our staff and kudos to them for all the work they have put behind this. Finally, I also want to report that on behalf of our staff, that our Treetop trekking pavilion at Binbrook is now complete. And this was a project that was pending for a few years, and we're really pleased to see this done in time for this season. And as past this Monday, our pavilion is available for the public, and we're really pleased to have that. If you have time, go to Binbrook, buy a ticket, use your pass, and check it out. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, thank you, CAO. Anybody who wants to try that treetop trekking, I can verify I am terrified of heights, and I never had so much fun in my life. So I would encourage everybody, and it's for all ages. They have the young section as well, which I probably should have started off on. But anyway, and thank you, Vice Chair Mackenzie, for going to the Conservation Ontario meeting on my behalf. Your update was very succinct, and really appreciate that. And also, Member Foster, thank you again for you and Member Cridlin for sitting on the foundation. I see a lot of really good things on the horizon, and you're absolutely making it possible. So it has been moved by, let me put this down, Member Ingrao and seconded by Member Kewald to receive all three updates, please, all at once. Any objection? Thank you. And just to let you know, Member Fiore had to switch over systems, so she's still here, I believe. And Member Clark had to go to another meeting, so he had to make his excuses to go. The last thing we have, folks, is we need to go in closed session.
Chair.
Yes, sir. Yeah, ma'am.
Before we move on to closed session, can I just bring one request for staff under new business?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to point out, I was Googling accessible parks, and our parks are listed on Conservation Ontario's website with a nice little icon indicating which parks are accessible. But then when you link off to our website, there's nothing on our website that indicates which parks are accessible to people who have those types of concerns. Can we, I mean, even if we got this nice flashy page with these icons as well, could we just add an accessibility icon, or maybe look at how we can make it clear that which parks are accessible?
CAO Sharma?
To you, Chair Johnson. I think we have something. I'm going to ask staff who are online today if anybody has any information on that. We may have that information on our page, maybe not in the right location, but we'll do it. Thank you.
I'm happy to leave it with you, and if you want to give me an update later, that sounds great. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you. And also under new business, I just want to apologize to everybody for the screw up earlier. It was totally my responsibility, and I am so sorry. Thank you, Vice Chair Mackenzie. You did a super job taking over on my behalf. I really appreciate that. So, folks, we need to go in camera. And here is, I need a motion from, and it's, I believe, Member Metcalf. Are you still with us, sir? Oh, there you go. Thank you. Member Metcalf and seconded by Member Smith, that the board proceed into closed session at 11:56 a.m. in accordance with section 10.1C for discussion on a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the Npca. Any objections going in camera? Seeing none, I would ask all the staff that do not need to be on camera to please exit out of the meeting. Kevin, that includes you as well. And for the public, we will not be coming. Oh, we are coming back out with a motion. I'm sorry. So we're going to have to text Kevin that we're going to go back on web streaming. And also, everyone else, please make sure you're in a secure area, that your doors are closed, no one else, or your headsets are on, and that it is Okay, folks, thank you very much. We're now in open session, and I am going to ask that we have Member Cridlin, and it's seconded by Member Halenga, that the following motion be approved. And we're going to have a recorded vote on this, so I'm going to ask the clerk to read it out for us, please.
All right, the motion shall read as follows: that the board approve acquisition of the property legally described as part of Lot 14, Concession 1, Wainfleet, as in RO 602739, save and accept parts 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7, 59R-9702, RO 353180, parts 1, 2, 3, and 4, R59R 11985, and part 1, 59R16160, and parts 1 and 2, 59R16773, Township of Wainfleet, from its current owner, in accordance with terms and conditions outlined in agreement of purchase and sale, as per verbal report of Chief Administrative Officer dated April 16, 2021. And further, that the Chief Administrative Officer be authorized to execute all such documents on behalf of Npca as may be required to complete the property acquisition in accordance with the terms and conditions of the agreement of purchase and sale. And if you would like, I can take attendance, or you can have this as a recorded vote.
Can we do a recorded vote for it, please, and go down the list?
We most certainly can.
Do you want me to do it for you?
No, I've got it.
Okay.
Please indicate yay or nay in favor of the vote as read out. Member Beattie.
Yes, in favor.
Member Brady.
Yes, in favor.
I understand Member Clark is not here. Member Kuhn-Peterson.
Member Kuhn-Peterson says A. She's just texted it to me. I don't know if that counts.
Member Cridlin.
In favor?
Member Fior.
In favor.
Member Foster.
In favor?
Member Halenga.
Aye.
Member Hewson.
In favor.
Member Ingrao.
In favor.
Member K-Wall.
In favor.
Member McKenzie.
In favor.
Member Metcalf.
In favor.
Member Rapley.
In favor.
Member Smith.
Yes.
Member Steele.
Yes.
And Member Shurton is not in attendance. Member Woodhouse.
Yes.
Member Wright.
Yes.
And Chair Johnson.
Yes.
The vote is carried unanimously.
Thank you very much, everyone, and all the best. Everybody stay safe. Get your shots if you can. And it's moved by Member Hewson, seconded by Member Woodhouse, that we adjourn. Any oppositions? Seeing none. Thank you, everyone. Take care, please.